and welcome to the Fat Middle-Aged Man with MS, a thought-provoking blog. Now, get stuck in, will you?
Hi there, everybody. My name's Steve Manning. I am recording under the pseudonym The Fat Middle-Aged Man with MS. Now, this is the first of what I hope will be a number of videos, assuming that people find them useful. And really, I just want to start with this one by saying that I'm a member of a number of groups on Facebook related to MS, and it breaks my heart. It really breaks my heart to read what people are going through. It's unforgiving illness, multiple sclerosis, yet it's very individual. Some of the symptoms we are all going to suffer at some point at differing levels, and there are other symptoms that hopefully many people won't have to suffer. But nevertheless, it is, if you haven't experienced any of the symptoms, to try and advise somebody, for instance, who has never experienced mental fatigue. It's, you know, it may be coming from a good heart, but unless you've experienced it, you'll never really understand it. I would assume actually there are many neurologists who will have some understanding because they hear of their patients, but they too, unless you've actually experienced it, is very difficult to understand. Now, what I want to do, this is completely free talk, so it'll be unedited unless I say something rude, and then I will have to cut that out, I suppose. And I'll be learning as I go along how to communicate on video. But my story is this, and I give you my story not for anything other than hopefully giving somebody some sense of hope that they can make a difference in their lives, let alone anybody who has to deal with multiple sclerosis. People who are able-bodied, they have a lot of input into how their life will pan out. And it's just that with multiple sclerosis we have that additional challenge, which actually becomes larger and more intense, maybe at some points than not others. So, I'm really wanting to be an inspiration, if I can, to people who are going through a really tough time, and for that we need to be able to decide what areas can we maybe look at that will actually have some sort of impact, large or small, in improving our quality of life. And the first one for me is actually my mindset, how I handle issues. If I'm feeling bad, if I'm feeling ill, if I've got a bad headache, or some new symptoms come along, how am I handling that? And we've been given these emotions for a reason, and but at some point we can decide that okay, this has happened, so what am I going to do about it? Okay, just as when we meet people in the street, or even our loved ones or friends who will really not understand what somebody with multiple sclerosis is having to go through, and yet they will actually, with the best intentions in the world, I'm certain, they will be saying, oh, you look fantastic, or maybe you just need to do a little bit of exercise, or just chill out a bit, there are people in a lot worse situations, all these things. Maybe they're just as frustrated as well, maybe you can't even say as you as, because I'm sure there's nothing more frustrating. Well, I know there's nothing more frustrating than having to handle something like multiple sclerosis. So there's that, and then there's maybe is there anything that we can do ourselves other than what the traditional medical allopathic medicine can do for us. What is it maybe what possibly happened to our body for it to succumb to multiple sclerosis? So those are the sorts of things that I've been dealing with. And then with the changing of your life because of multiple sclerosis, well, what can I do to maybe still have some sort of purpose, and having to not let MS be the determine or be the major issue in your life, but it does become more and more of an issue for sure, and you do have to work around it for sure. But that to make that a major focus can actually skew things up for your own peace of mind and all the rest of it. Now, I'm just being really quick here, and maybe a number of people have turned off already. Well, that's fine. The thing is, in life, you're going to try things, and sometimes they're going to fail, and this may be one of those situations where my intentions do not actually have any impact whatsoever on anybody else's life. But I'll say this: if one person actually finds a little bit of hope from what I'm saying, I'll be delighted. As far as I'm concerned, that will be a success. Now, my story, and I'll have to be really quick because I don't want this to be a long video. Although you got you have the freedom to turn off whenever you want to. But at 25. I won't go to before 25, but it wasn't particularly uplifting. But at 25, I decided that I wanted to become a financial advisor, and I actually started as a one-man band, and I had a clear vision that I wanted to build up a practice. And at the time, I was a born-again Christian at the time, and so one of my goals then was I wanted this to be a success and to be straight. I wanted to actually achieve something without having to cut corners, without doing anything that was actually going to impact anybody negatively. So that's where I started at 25. And what actually, one of the main things that had a major impact on my life was this simple saying. Now, I was listening to a guy called Brian Tracy, and it was a cassette tape set. I think it was about 12 cassettes in the set, and it was called The Psychology of Achievement. The Psychology of Achievement. And one of the things that stuck out in my mind that really I think has had a major impact on my life was the just simple saying, "If it's to be, it's up to me." It seems so simple, doesn't it? But up until then, I really didn't have that mindset or that belief, and I was in the situations I was because of everything else other than for me. So I had that mindset, and really my life changed from age of 25. So I determined that I wanted to be successful. I grew into becoming an entrepreneur, but I realized that if it's to be, it's up to me. By the age of 27, I had my first diagnosis of multiple sclerosis. And so over the next couple of years, interesting that because I think of the fortunate opportunity I had to be listening to somebody like Brian Tracy, for instance, my mindset was already, okay, this is the situation. I've got a fledgling company. What am I going to do? And I already started, I think, with optic neuritis, and I was feeling tired, had the pins and needles, and I was just mentally and physically really not in a good shape. And also, I suffered for a long time with really bad headaches, and I'll come back to that sometime if these tapes, these videos do actually take off, because one of the things, even it was about 3 or 4 years ago, I was thinking, we're told that we're not sure what starts MS. It could be an accident, could be due to an accident, car accident or something, or some sort of bang to the head, or could be to do with stress. people are more and more likely to say it's to do with some sort of initial bacteria or virus, and I was wondering why it was just me in my family. None of my brothers, sisters, aunties, uncles, granddads, nobody had MS. So I started looking into that. But we'll have to talk about that another time. But anyway, by 27 MS, so I had to make a decision. I'd already met a couple of clients with MS, and one client was in a very, very bad way. In fact, her husband was in a very bad way, and he was laid in bed, and I remember she had to evacuate him because he couldn't go to the toilet anymore and all the rest of it. So I'd already become aware of what potentially could happen. So what actually did happen for me was I changed my my priorities, and what I decided was money really wasn't going to be my major objective. What would be the point of me to build up a load of money when it's quite likely that sometime in the future I'm going to end up living in a care home. So my focus became on just success and success of the company. So I was working as hard as I could, and I was doing very, very well. But it was primarily for the company, and I just took out what I needed, and was perfectly satisfied with that. So my success was really just being successful. I suppose I could be classed as an entrepreneur that had no desire to build up a big lump sum of money, and so that sort of carried on through my life. And then by the time I was 50, I think it was about 50. I really was at a stage where from just having optic neuritis and having these episodes and occasionally falling down and things, I was actually just about 100% in a wheelchair, or I say scooter, because I've always chosen to use a scooter. And there was a period of time before I actually decided I had to stop working as a financial advisor, where I didn't even go to the office. I had a little office at home, and clients would very kindly come and have appointments with me at home. But I got to the stage there where the fatigue was so bad that I had to call them up in the morning and say, look, do you mind not coming, because I really am not up to doing this job. And they were very understanding, but I thought, look, this is no good. This is not doing me any good. It's not doing the company any good, and certainly it's putting my clients out. So I decided then to retire medically from the business, and it was passed on to a very able person who, and the company's going from strength to strength, and I'm just very glad that it's doing so. And then there was a period of time where my living environment was really not suitable to MS. So I was finding that, and my bladder was getting weak. And although I was using crutches at the time in the house just to get from one room to maybe the toilet, it was so exhausting. And so my energy was just being used up because I was going back 3 or 4 times. But by lunchtime, I was so tired, I would sit on the sofa or my easy chair and I'd fall asleep. So I was totally not in a good place to be able to do anything practical. And one of the things with MS is, that sometimes you're having these symptoms, and actually what it turns out to be is that you have additional symptoms, like you have an infection, or generally infections, because that's you've got a weakened immune system, and especially if you're using catheters and things, it's quite likely you have an infection. So at one point I was feeling so poorly, and I remember an occupational therapist saying to my then wife and I that I've only got a certain number of energy tokens, and I've got to be very sparing how I use them. Now, so my energy tokens were mainly being used up by going backwards and forwards to the toilet. So that's when it was decided I'd start using catheters. which anybody who uses catheters knows that causes all sorts of other problems. It relieves a great problem because it means that you just don't have to waste energy just walking to the toilet and back, for instance. There's so much happened in between here, so I'm trying to be really brief. And then there was a stage, because the environment that I was living in was really not suitable, that I ended up, and we're talking about 7 years ago now, ended up spending 10 days in a care home. And even then, I was using my scooter, and I was thinking, uh, I'm not. I know I'm not ready for this. I know I just need to make some more changes in the way I'm living my life to actually redistribute the energy that I've got. And in fact, when my son came to visit me, he said, "Dad, do you want to take me? Do you want me to take you away from here?" Because it wasn't particularly uplifting, and I've got to be careful because we're all in different levels of MS, but people were in a lot worse states than I was at the time. But I decided that I'd spend the 10 days there, and I would use it. First of all, because I could use my scooter all the time, I had energy, but I'd use it to be able to speak to the other people that are in the care home and just sort of try and lighten things up and talk to them and generally try to make the best of it. So that was that, but I had to really watch out for the mental fatigue, which was just getting more and more severe, and generally feeling quite poorly. I had a couple of times in hospital where I had very severe infections, and it's one of the three or one of the four serious ones that you tend to get in hospitals anyway. I wish I could remember what it was. It's not RMSI or something, but it was very serious and very difficult for antibiotics to handle them. But nevertheless, I did. In fact, I think when my son came to see me the second time, he was really concerned. He thought this was it. But afterwards, I saw the professor specialist, and he said, Steve, this is really serious. This infection, these bacteria, they don't leave your body, and they cluster, and you've got to be so careful because any sign of this coming back is got to be dealt with. So he was really. Not that I could do anything about it as far as they're concerned, apart from taking antibiotics. But nevertheless, so we had that to deal with as well. And then basically I read about a drug called modafinil, and I asked my doctor if I could have it, and he said, "Oh no, you can't have that. That's." That's not a good drug to have. But I said, well, look, would you speak to Professor Zychek, my neurologist, who I'd known for a long time. I hadn't seen him much because, I understood there's really not a great deal when you get to to the secondary progressive stage that I've got to that can be done than really self-management and just trying to look after your body. And he very kindly wrote back to the doctor, said, look, if Steve says he wants it, let him try it. I know it's off-label, for MS, but it does seem to work. Well, that gave me a whole new lease of life for at least 2 or 3, 4 hours a day by using that. So it meant that I could maybe start attempting something else. And so I'm at the situation now where we're talking a few years later down the line, where actually I thought that 7 years ago, 6 years ago, I would now be in a care home. In fact, if I remember, I will put a link on this video, which is a short one, which just shows what my dear partner May does to help me to get around, to actually get on the toilet, sit down, go to bed, that sort of thing. I am making the best of life. I'm actually doing other things to keep myself able to support myself in a way. I have I'm so grateful for what it really is, a basic life. But it's this is the thing, when you actually sort of decide really what is important. Um, Having a decent meal, let alone 3 times a day, once a day, but be able to feed yourself 3 times a day, have a roof over your head, have some heat or some cool, whatever it is you need, and good relationships. Really, everything else is just a bonus, isn't it? And so this is what I am very grateful for. I'm not in a care home. I I struggle to see myself in a care home because um, as long as I have this help. For instance, it was only about an hour ago I was given some Ritalin. Now I only take half a tablet, but that actually has just helped me to do something like this. Now after this, I'll probably sit down and I will probably have to sleep for a couple of hours, or just rest, and because it does take quite a lot of energy just to be able to think. But I just want to be able to, hopefully over time, dealing with these issues that we all deal with, and in a way, able-bodied people struggle with how they handle life, how they how their mindset is, what they should and shouldn't be doing, or if they or they've got no hope, or what. It's not. We're all the same there, but we can do something about it. So I'll go back to just to really finish off, is to say that if it wasn't for at age 25 having that simple message, if it's to be, it's up to me. I think I don't know how I would be. It's a job to say how I'd be dealing with MS over the last 31 years. But then I'm also listen to people who really have had struggles in different ways. There's a man called Viktor Frankl who was a prisoner in Auschwitz. It seems hard to think there can be much worse than that, but he managed to somehow say, I might be in prison here, I might be being in such a bad way, but these prison guards, they cannot take away my mind. Now, isn't that just so incredible? And so if somebody like that somehow can feel freer than his captors, I want to listen to what this man's got to say, and I've listened to a lot of people who have got some common sense, encouraging, motivational, self-development, all these things. They actually become very sort of watered down, and you think, oh yeah, here we go again. But you learn something from everybody that you meet, even if it is, I do not want to be like that person. There's something we'll learn from everybody, and life is tough. But I would just like to encourage you, if you wish to listen to any more of my ramblings, please do. If I see there's no impact, then I will know that maybe it was a big mistake. But I hope that the encouragement I've got from other people, from what other people have had to say, and how it's had an impact on my life, I do hope that somebody will find what I'm saying to be uplifting, and will give you hope that really it's within your power to be able to do something about how you handle the situation that you're in. And again, I really feel for the people that I'm reading who have gone through or are going through what I've gone through and am going through, and it just seems so trite to actually say like or a cry symbol or just to write I'm so sorry to hear that, I understand. Because actually, even just typing, because I've just got one. My left hand is my good hand. Fortunately, I'm left-handed, but actually, to type without, oh god, and especially with spell check, it takes quite a long time. So although I do write, because I try and put stuff together for a website, etc. It's not like it takes a little bit longer. That's what I can say. But anyway, listen. I first of all, and finally, I want to say, although I don't contribute much by written word, if you like, I really love to hear how people are doing on these sites that are particularly related to MS or anything like that, as well as reading the success stories of people who've had real problems in their lives and they've managed to overcome them. It is really encouraging. Please give me some input, some feedback. Tell me if I'm on the wrong path. Tell me if it's actually been helpful or really unhelpful. Or any encouragement would be really much appreciated. Thank you so much. Speak again soon, I hope. Bye.